Hello, it is Monday the 11th of August and it's been a pretty good weekend for crypto holders. Unfortunately, we see this quite often when you get a really strong move on a Sunday. It's quite often the high on the Monday for the week. So we need to be a little bit careful. We start the week really quietly in terms of news and expected events that could move the markets. It was a bank holiday in Japan. There's really nothing going on except President Trump speaking. He's speaking about half an hour after the US markets open. And later this week, really, the big news is going to be the Bank of Australia and US inflation data on Tuesday and Thursday. And then the end of the week, we kind of end quietly. Half of Europe has a little bit of a holiday, while the United States has kind of retail sales data. But really, what everybody's watching for in the market is the tariff stuff, what Trump says. He really is the biggest cause of volatility in the market at the moment. And of course, we start the week with the talks in Alaska about resolving the Ukraine situation. And I think that whilst I find it really unlikely that we're going to get an agreement that Ukraine and Europe will agree to, I think that the market is kind of pricing in that might happen with moves lower in oil and so on. However, the big kind of in the flow of the market, the biggest thing today, really, or this week, is going to be options expiration at the end of the week. Sort of 7-8 times out of 10, that is a bullish week for the market. We kind of hold up into Friday, and the VIX options, which a lot of people use to hedge in, do not expire till next week, Wednesday. And so it could, the kind of bullish good feelings could end up holding up until the middle of next week. However, the problem is that the kind of events that can mess everything up this week are really not kind of programmed news. They are from outside news. So we need to be a little bit careful. So we have been long this week, my group, with we've been long ETH, and we had a target of 4,000, and we said if we can hold above 4,000, especially on a weekly and monthly close, then we will continue higher to 4,400 and beyond there. So if we take a look, let's take everything off here in terms of what we're drawing on. So we had a big 3-wave move lower in ETH in 21-22. We had a lovely 5-wave rally with a 3-wave correction again, a smaller one, and this is the next swing. So the first 5 waves is either going to be this being a big A, B, C, and we're finished, or it could be that this is just wave 1 of a bigger, new, longer upswing. And the key question is here is, have we finished this 5th wave? Because for me, in terms of targets, we're a little bit short of it. And if I put more my scribbles back on and we look at these fib levels for ETH from this high to low, fib retrace levels, you can see that these were really well respected, and this 786 fib level at 4,000, which was our previous double top in March last year and again tested in December. Now that we are above it, I would expect this to be support, but I would expect this to be support on a weekly close, and that means that intraday, we could dip underneath it. The thing we don't kind of want to see is that we drop underneath it and it becomes resistance, because that points to a bigger move. Now, so this is why I've got this sort of tough target zone, if you like. One of the very common patterns in markets is this wave 5 being equal to wave 1, and we are at a point where this was 61.8 of wave 1, and the equal is actually all the way up here at 4,850. So we could say, actually, if we're going to measure it that way, that would be our target. The reason I've got this as a first target zone here and lower is if we continue to make these kind of big A, B, C swings in ETH. So this is one, and this is a bigger one. So if I then measure this first big move from 2022 to here and project it from here, you you can see that the equal measured move is a little bit higher. So this is where we get our zone from, our target zone, between 4,400 and 4,600. And we're not quite there. So we're going to look for support and potentially this to continue higher or a shallow pullback, no kind of trend reversal. So far it's been very quietly sideways, and while we've gone sideways, Bitcoin has benefited. And if we look, we would normally expect this has all been 5 waves, and this was 5 waves. I would expect this to be 5 waves to finish here. And if we look from this low that we made a week ago on Sunday, we've done 1, 2 and a big wave 3. So I still think that we see one more swing higher, and then the trouble zone in ETH is going to be up here around between 4,400 and 4,600 next. Now, so today I would not rush to get out yet. I think that we could squeeze a little bit higher and we see what happens in this zone. And if we drop back, as I said, underneath that 4,000 level and it becomes resistance, this run is finished early and it's over. And we're going to not over for a big major top, but at least for a short-term bigger pullback. And one of the reasons I'm a little bit concerned, actually, let's go back to this, is it's very common for this market on a daily to make highs and lows on a Monday. If we have a strong move, this high here, swing high was a Monday, this swing low here, reversal was a Monday. Like, it's just Sunday, Monday. These strong moves very often tend to be the high or the low for the week, and that's even more so for Bitcoin. So that's what we're looking for. We're looking for this 4,000 level, or maybe a little bit lower, to be support, and one more push higher in ETH, and we may not pull back that far. And in Bitcoin, it's really interesting what happened, because whilst ETH was doing well, all of the altcoins were doing pretty well, and then when Bitcoin had its big rally yesterday and this morning, everything else unfortunately pulled back. It's back to the old days of everybody runs back to Bitcoin. So this is very similar pattern. If we look, this spike high here, Monday the 14th of July, let's go back to these lows here. Sunday the 3rd of August was the low here. And these Monday levels are very often the highs and lows of the week. This high here that we made, not so much. This was a Monday here though, and a kind of higher low before another leg lower. And there is a little bit of a risk that we're in that same position. We've done one swing lower, higher low, and another low before this is over. When I'm not sure if that's working or not, I put fib retrace levels on and look at the patterns from this high to low. So if we do this here, we can say very similar, same, this is an 886 reversal. If we close today, because we haven't got our daily close, but if we close today underneath 127.85, because I expect it to kind of bounce back in a retest, but a close under there points to a bigger pullback this to start the week to 117 in Bitcoin. So at the moment, yes, it's come all the way back again. I think this sets us up for a bit of a volatile start for the week, and sometimes it's better to sit back and watch out how Monday plays out, and then get your better trades on when you get a better feel for how everything is working on Tuesday. That's how I'm going to trade this week. Now, previously, when people have taken profit in Bitcoin, ETH has always been like the first one to go, but the bigger altcoins have usually followed on if we're going to see a bigger rally. And so the question really is, which one is going to be the next one to do an ETH and squeeze to new highs? I've talked before about this Litecoin, and I am really watching this Litecoin. One, because of the stories about BlackRock. If we think about what's happened lately, all of the money has come from institutional flows into crypto, and people becoming, Bitcoin treasuries and kind of MicroStrategy type leveraged Bitcoin bets and widening out into which one is next. And so really, I think the which one is next is really important. So I want to talk about Litecoin. because Litecoin and Ethereum are really very, very different. Litecoin is like a bit of a Bitcoin that works better, faster, cheaper, whereas Ethereum is a bit of a platform. But that doesn't mean it's not a utility. And if we go back to previous swings, so if we look, I've got my fibs on this most recent big three-wave drop that we've made, then we've done a very similar three-wave drop here. And one of the rules, a fib pattern rule, is when you make a big three-wave drop like this, the most common retrace is a 786 fib. In fact, we went higher than that here with this swing. We went all the way up almost to the highs, but the most common first target is this 786 fib. So if we do the same thing here in Litecoin and we say that this was our big three-wave drop and 786, then 333 should be our kind of minimum target in a big three-wave move. One of the kind of confirmations that you're going to do that and you've started your swing is getting above the 236 fib, which, as you know, is my kind of trend touchstone in Fibonacci terms. So for that in Litecoin, that means that this 128.50 is the, you know, a monthly close above that 128.50, and Litecoin is going to do a big swing to 333 minimum if we can do that. So you can see that we tried this 236 fib level in December, in November, December, January, and then in March, unfortunately, we did a big three-wave reversal off this level. And here we are testing it again. So it's really important. And whilst we've paused here, and if we look at this on the daily, we have paused here. We haven't closed above it, but if we can, you can see we got above it before. We couldn't, what you look when you get above it, instead of just washing back and forward through it, you want to get above this level and then find support from it and then hold it. But quite often, you know, when you get a big bullish breakout, you don't even get to back test it. Sometimes, you know, you'll just get a shallow move and then carry on, and it won't come back for you always. And so I always think it's, if we can go sideways and build a little base here or a little three-wave correction, when it does, you'll stop where you're wrong, you know, because, and if it's a false breakout, it's much higher, you can move it up. If we break out here at the moment, we're wrong kind of underneath this swing low. So some little three-wave correction here, I think, sets up a really interesting long setup in Litecoin to be the next one to go. And 333 kind of would be a swing target for this trade if we can do it. Doge is making a bigger three-wave correction. That's quite often one of the first ones to go of the kind of non-utility coins, and so I'm watching that one too. Ripple isn't quite there. Sui I had been watching, and if we look at this on the daily, in terms of these moving averages, this was looking really sweet. Unfortunately, it looks like a bigger pullback, and this 61.8 level here in the middle is being a little bit tough. Link is one that I got my eye on, because that's quite a good bigger utility that I think might be one of the next ones to go. And if we look at it in terms of fib patterns, it looks a bit like ETH. You know, we've done from 2022, we did this big three-wave correction. Textbook, we made a really long-term base here, which we launched from. Lovely five-wave move, three waves back. Again, five-wave moves, three waves back, and we're looking to see if this is a bigger 1, 2, 3, and we go lower first, or whether we continue higher. And when I look at this relative to like ETH, and we look at where we kind of don't want to close back underneath, 20.5 for me in Chainlink is where I'm looking at to hold as support today after last week's lovely big move. That's on a weekly close, so intra-week, I think we could come a little bit lower. And you know, when you make a big thrust candle like this, kind of halfway back of the open close is where I'm usually looking for to hold as support. So if we do that here in Link, that's 19.18. So that's where I think that an ideal kind of buy if it comes back here. but it might not come back that far. It might actually just come back to 20.51. So those are the two levels that I'm watching in Link, and I'm going to put alerts on those, and then I think that could be the next one to go. And then when those coins, those bigger altcoins, start a bigger swing, then we can start maybe talking about the beginning of an alt season. But just this week, everything that's going on, it just feels a little bit iffy. We need to be a bit careful with our entries and not get chopped up with fake moves. Here's a really good example. Not Arthur Hayes is one of my favorite people in crypto. I think he's super smart, and he, beginning of August, sold all his ETH, 8.32 million, a whole bunch of other stuff as well. He said the tariff bill's coming and so are the reasons, and so he sold at the beginning of August, and then he of course bought it all back again because it kept going higher, and Pinky swears that he'll never take profit again. So it's a really good example of not everybody, you mark your levels and sometimes it goes beyond it, and he did that with ETH. And so it's the same thing, sometimes we try, it doesn't work, we have to keep trying again, but we have to keep a bigger eye on the bigger picture of what's going on and what's going to be next. And I really do think some of these bigger utility coins could be next, and then the levels spread out. And for smaller alts and memes, ETH, if ETH can continue higher and only does a shallow pullback here, that will be the best news for them. So that's where we are. Let's let today play out, and then it shouldn't be a crash, but let's see opportunities for tomorrow.